Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw. First of all, thank you so much. You're great. You're great. I can see on your face, like, you're bright and fun. Look at you. I love it. I love it. Okay, so the first photo that I'm looking at, wait, are you a kindred spirit? Are you a kindred spirit? What is this? Okay, so in the
let's hope so. Let's go with that. Yes.
I think so. Okay, so the first photo I'm looking at, it's magic. So it's a photo that seems to be in a gallery, and it's a sculpture. It's a photo of a sculpture. It's basically photographed straight on with overhead light, and the sculpture itself seems to be a collection or stack of 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 15 drawers made out of wood with different colored finish on them. None of the drawers are open. They're all closed. And they're held together with what looks like to be a belt, I guess. So it's like if the belt or the lashing wasn't there, the drawers would just spill open or apart. Yeah. And it's an interesting sculpture. It's an interesting thing to send that as your first image. And in the background, I could just see a few sketches. It looks like a doorway into the rest of the gallery or something. I love that this is the photo. So what am I looking at? What is this?
So I love the way you're interpreting this photo, and a lot of your interpretations are very good. This is actually a picture from an art museum. It was the first time I stepped foot in an art museum since March 2020, when everything shut down.
Oh, wow, yeah.
In the United States. And I know you're in Hong Kong, and I know there were some differences about how everybody has experienced the pandemic.
Sure.
But basically, my life shut down March of 2020, and this picture was July of 2021. That my husband, things were opening up again because we thought things were getting better.
Right.
And my husband had something in Indianapolis, which is about 3 hours away from where I live. And so we ended up going to this art museum, and it was, I love museums. I love art museums.
Sure.
It's always, I feel like if somebody is not feeling inspired for something to write, going to an art museum is a great thing to do.
For sure.
Because there are just so many things to jog, kind of the creativity there. It can always jog your memory. But I saw this particular, it's actually not a sculpture. It's actually supposedly a piece of furniture. Although not exactly a practical piece of furniture. It was in their kind of design area. And it is, as you kind of supposed, a bunch of drawers that are just held together by a belt.
Right.
And clearly, if you unbelted the belt, everything would fall, and it would, like, if there's stuff in the drawers, you don't know if there's stuff in the drawers or not, but if there's stuff in the drawers, it's just going to fall out.
Sure.
And but the belt's holding it all in place. And I looked at that, and I think the title of this particular piece of artwork, it has something to do with memory, or, like the cabinet of memory, something like that. But I looked at that, and I'm like, that is exactly what it's like to write a book.
Okay.
That I am putting a bunch of drawers that maybe aren't even related to each other. And some of the drawers, like when I first start thinking about them, they're empty, or I haven't opened them. I think there's something in there, but I'm not really sure.
I love it.
And it's like, as a writer, what I'm doing is stretching the belt around all these different ideas and characters and possibilities, and I'm putting it all together.
Nice.
That I looked at that and I thought, that is what that's what my writing process is. There. That's it.
Amazing. Fantastic.
So it was so much fun to be at this art museum, and that kind of encapsulated like, that's kind of what I was thinking this summer.
Right.
I think.
Right. Okay. Look, since we've just met, and I've spent a long time. Okay, so my first degree was in creative writing, mostly looking at poetics and that kind of stuff. So I spent a lot of time thinking about writing, and professionally, writing is part of what I do, as is my own work. And so for me, it's like a real treat to speak to somebody who has a facility with the work of writing. So you've gone through. I mean, the first book is always the first. I guess it's the first major hurdle, and then you realize, oh, wait a second, this is a doable process. But I'm also really fascinated because in talking to you and speaking with you, I'm trying to glean and to kind of hear your story and how your life evolved to have you become a committed, confirmed author who like, for whatever reason, you're writing for children, and I'm sure as your children get older, your audience gets older. So take us back to when you first began writing. Like, have you always been a writer? Have you always?
Sure.
So that's the kind of question that I ask.
Started with being a reader, which I think is the way. Yeah, I think that's how it starts for a lot of writers, so that's not unusual. I grew up on a farm in Ohio, and yeah, happy childhood, huge bookworm. Partly, I think, partly because my parents were huge readers, and my siblings were huge readers, and my grandparents were huge readers. I mean, it was what we did.
Yeah.
And but for me, also, it was a way to engage with the world. Because where I was growing up, for good and for bad, people were all pretty much, I won't say the same, but pretty homogeneous.
Right.
That pretty much everybody was white, pretty much everybody was Christian, pretty much all of my friends lived on farms too.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, that's a wonderful way to grow up.
For sure.
But I definitely felt a longing to know about the rest of the world. And to know about people in other places. And, I was very curious about the other side of the planet. Are people the same as me? Are they different? Like, how are they different? How are they the same? All those kind of things. And reading was a way to find that out. Travel later on became a way to find that out too. But the reading made me want to travel, and, it opened the world for me. And very quickly as a kid, I started wanting to write as well, to kind of cast my stories out into the world as well. And so from a very young age, I was, making up stories, and I was sometimes kind of lazy about writing them down, but I definitely would make up the stories. I would tell them to my younger brother and younger sister. And I felt like I was someone who wanted to become a writer. I didn't know anybody who was a writer, so I didn't know it was possible.
Oh, wow.
So I started out actually working as I got degrees in both creative writing and journalism, and then also history, just because I liked it. And I started out working as a newspaper reporter, and that kind of was the springboard into then writing fiction as well.
Yeah, like in your growing up, was there a model? Like, for example, for Cadence, she sees me, she sees her mother. We're both, we spent a long time around words and expression and that kind of stuff. So that's a model for her. But who was your model?
That is a good question. I did not really have a model of someone who was a writer, except the authors of the books that I loved.
Okay.
My parents, this is kind of ironic, they both hate to write and have always hated to write. That's like their least favorite thing to do. And so they were kind of puzzled that I had turned this love of reading into a love of wanting to write. I will say, though, my dad is very much a storyteller.
Right.
And he was always telling us stories like family history. He would read a book, and then he, like at the dinner table, he'd be like, oh, and then this happened in this book, and I can't believe this. And so I was hearing a lot of, I would say, oral stories.
Sure.
And I also had a lot of teachers who were encouraging to me. So I would say they were models too, but I did not have a model of somebody being a writer except from the books that I read.
Right. So just to throw this out there as well, because from my own experience, when I talk to people and do consulting in strategic communications and business and all that stuff, and my client who is such a successful business leader, I've very often used it, and I don't know if I've used this analogy because of my training in creative writing, but I've always said that we're like farmers in that we're always sowing seeds, little ideas, and we don't necessarily commit to the person following our ideas, but we put these seeds and ideas out in front of clients, in front of people, students, whatever, and sometimes the ground, their minds, their imagination is fertile, and something develops out of it, which it's a stretch. It's a total stretch. But I'm here to say that if you're such an accomplished author and you've done the work of writing, which is it's toil. It's tilling the land of your head. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you got it from a little bit from your parents, a little bit of something from farming, because that's how I kind of feel that author, like writing is to a certain extent. And I'm just imposing this, I'm projecting this on you with all due respect.
Well, I like that analogy. That's very good. I mean, because of the agricultural background, I do think of planting seeds.
Sure.
And it's funny because I have a joke with another writer who's a friend of mine, Lisa McMahon. We, for years, went out on book tour together, and I would say, Lisa, we're just planting seeds here.
For sure.
And so I love those analogies as well.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Okay. With your permission, would you like to say some more about the drawers, or would you like to move on to the next photograph?
Well, I guess I could say a little bit more, which is that the book that I was in the midst of revising this particular book, while I was, when I took time out and then went to the art museum, that particular book is about kids who discover letters that were written about 50 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And something happened between those two kids who wrote letters back and forth 50 years ago. And so the kids in the modern day are trying to figure out what's going on. And with that particular book specifically, it felt very much like I was trying to pull a lot of things together.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot about growing up in the 1970s versus what it's like growing up for kids now.
Oh, for sure.
There was a lot about cleaning out old things. So, yeah, that book is called The Secret Letters, and it will be coming out in fall of 2022.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this for me is meat and potatoes. This is like solid. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm really happy to have you on. Like, I really, really enjoy it. So before I think it's gonna be fighting tangents. Like, you're gonna go on a tangent. I'm gonna want to go on a different tangent, and we may never actually get to your photographs. So, shall we go to your next photo?
Sounds fair.
Okay. So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.